Hi folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast, Season 14, Episode 4. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we are once again, always excited to get behind the mic each week and talk to you about personal finance. Not sure what that says about me, really. I'm just a zealot, you know that by now. But it's great to have you with me. Thank you so much for joining me. I know that you're itching to get going with your investing and your wealth building. You know, it's the fun part of personal finance. Remember, this whole season is dedicated to new accumulators, those looking to build wealth, but maybe who are at the start of that journey. You're itching to get going, and boring old headmaster Pete here keeps reining you in and putting the brakes on. But I reckon it'll serve you very well to put a little bit of forethought into the whole investing and wealth building exercise. In my world, we call that financial planning, right? It's a long time view of mine that you can do your own financial planning for the most part. You can do your own investing. There's a twee little saying in my world: if you're planning to invest, don't invest in planning. Actually, you don't need to invest in planning, although I'm sure you would get benefit if you did. You can do it for free and you can do it yourself, and I'm committed to giving you the information you need to do that. So we're going to talk a little bit about planning today. After the main body of the show, going to look at a review that somebody's kindly left for me, introduce what we're talking about next week. But before any of that, remember, this podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my friends at 7 Investment Management. They've been helping me out here since the spring of 2011, which is a long time. And I definitely couldn't have built Meaningful Money to what it is without their help. So please do say thank you to them. Go check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. Also, don't forget the new self-investment platform that they've built, which is branded with Meaningful Money. Loads more information about that at meaningfulmoney.tv/podcastinvest. Okay, financial planning in its richest sense, certainly in the professional sense, was a real revelation for me back in 2006. That's when I sat a proper financial planning qualification and a light bulb went off in my head. This is really what it was all about. Not about flogging people ISAs and income protection insurance and stuff like that, but about helping them plan to realize their goals. And it's now the entirety of what I do at Jackson's Wealth. For the layperson, though, it can be difficult to get your head around all the different threads that affect our finances at any given time, hold those threads together and work out what they actually mean for you. Fortunately, at the new accumulator stage of the journey, your planning needs are fairly simple and straightforward. So today we're going to cover what you need to know and what you need to do to have some parameters, if you like, for your wealth building. Remember, there's always a show notes page for each episode, and that's where you'll find links and notes and all that sort of stuff. meaningfulmoney.tv/NA4 is today's show notes. NA4 stands for New Accumulators Episode 4. meaningfulmoney.tv/NA4. Let's dive in now to what you need to know. Okay, first thing you need to know is that your foundation needs to be in place first. I'm just going to mark this very quickly right at the top. If you haven't listened to episode 2 in this season about building on a sure foundation, then you're jumping ahead, right? Definitely go back and listen to that now if you haven't. I'll still be here when you get back. Go do that now. Okay, that said, second thing you need to know, planning provides a pathway for your wealth building. So at this early stage, if you're a new accumulator, concepts like retirement, they're pretty distant probably, depends on how old you are, of course. And the more distant a goal is, it won't hold power over you. Now, as you approach the particular milestone of retirement, it becomes a very strong pull, believe me. But right now, as new accumulators, it's not really on our radar, okay? So what are we planning towards then? Well, it depends, but it might be that you've got some kind of milestone event that you'd like to achieve someday, maybe like buying your first home. Okay, so let's take that as an example. Now, if that's a vague goal at some indeterminate point in the future, and you don't really know how much you'll need, well, you might be saving towards it, but you're more likely to, I think, get distracted by something shiny along the way because your wealth building towards that end, it lacks any structure. All right. So if you don't really know where you're going, how much you need, when you're going to need it by, that's not going to keep you on track probably. So compare that with the following. Let's say I want to buy a house for £200,000 in 5 years' time. I want to have a 15% deposit plus another £15,000 for fees and to kit the place out as I would want to. So that's 45 grand I'm going to need to have available in 5 years' time. If I work that out and assume a fairly modest growth rate of 4% a year, that means I need to save £665 a month to get to my goal, right? But if I use a lifetime ISA, well, I get 25% bonus on my savings. So I can achieve my goal by saving only, in inverted commas, £532 a month. How much clearer is that? Now I know what return I need, how much I need to save each month, what vehicle to use to maximize my chances of success. Now all I got to do is find the £532 a month, right? So all your attention is now focused on the thing that you need to do. You have to find an amount of money each month. The rest is just maths. You've got real clarity. You've created a pathway and you know the steps that you need to take. You're starting with a sure foundation, so you're in a strong position, unlikely to be derailed by an unexpected bill. You're in really great shape, and because you know the numbers around your goal, you're going to be motivated to press on and get on with it. All right? So planning provides a pathway, and in turn that provides motivation and parameters. Third thing you need to know is to understand the variables at play here. Whenever you're building wealth, there's not many variables, just a few, and they will determine your trajectory, whether you're on target or not towards those goals. So monthly annual savings is the first one. That's usually the input variable, right? You put that in, and what that turns into depends on the other variables. Variables like time. Time is always your friend when it comes to wealth building because it allows the magic of compounding to do its thing. As wealth building is usually best done over decent periods of time, usually would express that variable in years. Return is the next one. It's the percentage that your money is assumed to grow by each year. Obviously, that's a function of risk you're taking, of which more next week. When you're planning, it's usually best to err on the low side of return. Okay, more on that in a bit. Inflation. Inflation is a variable and a factor which is working against you. I ignored it in the house purchase example earlier because of the fairly short timescales at place. But the easiest way to factor inflation in is to subtract it from your assumed return. It's a fairly clunky way of dealing with it, but it serves its purpose. Costs is a factor. It's a negative variable. It's another reason to keep your assumed growth rate low. Every pound you pay in charges is a pound which isn't in your own pocket. So obviously this is a biggie. And tax is a cost as well. So that's a factor. Finally, wrapper choice. As I alluded to earlier, there are some accounts like lifetime ISAs and pensions which offer you money, free money, to invest into. You get money, right? So tax relief, that's called. And obviously you can then factor that in like I did in the house purchase example where actually I needed to save a lower amount every month because the balance was made up by a bonus in that particular wrapper. So if you understand the interplay of these variables, that's key really to building wealth successfully and getting to your goals in the most direct manner possible. Make sense? Financial planning then is essentially just the application of some simple maths. Plus an understanding of how the finance system works and how it affects that maths with things like tax relief and taxation. Really, it's that latter bit that keeps me in a job, okay? The understanding the finance system, tax and trusts and all that sort of stuff, that keeps me in a job. But the maths bit is fairly easy. Obviously, we tend to deal professionally with clients at the other end of their wealth building journey where it is more complex because there's lots more pots of money at play. Some old pensions with dodgy old rules attached and stuff like that. It's my job to know about that sort of stuff. But for you at the new accumulator stage, it's actually fairly easy. So let's have a look at how you can do your own financial planning pretty quickly and easy. Let's look at what you need to do now. Okay, how many have I got? I got on to 7 things, some shorter and some longer. First thing you need to do is to work in pots. Say what now? In the olden days, people saved money in sort of jam jars. They put actual physical cash in jam jars or envelopes because it helped them compartmentalize the money they were putting aside for the future. this money is for Christmas, this is for the holiday next year, all that stuff. I actually think this is a really helpful way of thinking. I encourage my clients to do it here at Jackson's, and I encourage you to do it as well, because it makes for really easy tracking of progress towards your goals. If you have an account for, your house purchase one day, another for saving for a deposit, maybe for a buy-to-let investment you'd quite like to do one day, another pot for your eventual retirement, it makes it quite easy to divvy the money that you're saving towards those things between the different goals and to keep that compartmentalization under review. You can have a different investment strategy in each account too, reflecting the different timescales of each goal. So how do you compartmentalize money in today's modern age as opposed to jam jars and envelopes and stuff? Although, those do still work. Just make sure not to keep too much cash in the house, right? There are a couple of ways you can do it. Obviously, having different accounts, as I mentioned, is the first. So pension for retirement, lifetime ISA for first home purchase, if that's for you, general stocks and shares ISA for money which you might need to have accessible before you can get at your pension money. Or maybe you can use an ISA as kind of a second string retirement play. But the different account for different goal system it definitely works as an option. You could partition money up inside a single account. So you can maybe opt for a more cautious fund for your shorter term money and a more adventurous fund for your longer term goals. So let's say you've got a stocks and shares ISA, just one account, but you want to divvy up the money in that account to different goals and timescales. So just choose a different fund for each goal and each timescale. Let's say you're paying £400 a month into your ISA. You can tell the platform to invest, say, $250 into the shorter term, less adventurous fund, the more cautious fund, maybe £150 a month into the longer term fund. So you can split your money up that way. Obviously, make sure you keep money that you're going to need in the next 2 to 3 years in cash. Talked about that last week. It just isn't worth risking that money in the markets. If you need to divvy your cash up into different pots for various reasons, you can use different bank accounts. I tend to do that. But these days, some of the new challenger banks like Starling, they enable you to do that in-app. So in the app on your phone, you can set a savings goal, and it'll create a virtual pot for you for each of your goals. Very cool technology. So use the whole pots, jam jars, envelopes type system, even for your longer term stuff, all right? And just think in that way. Compartmentalize your money. I think that really helps people. I'm sure there are some arguments against that, but I don't care. I just think it works. I think we're fairly simple beings, and that kind of simplicity really works. Second thing you need to do is to establish your timescale where you can. This is a key variable. You need to know how long your goals are in the future so that you can do the maths at all. If you don't know the timescale, or if it's a bit vague, just take a stab at it. You can always adjust the maths later on. Chances are you'll have at least 2 basic timescales. You'll have 1 day, retirement, really long-term stuff, and then just the nearer term stuff. And this latter one, this nearer term stuff, you can maybe break that down further and try to get your timescales in greater focus. Maybe buy a house in 5 years, take a massive holiday in 10 years, or whatever, go down to 3 days a week, or whatever, right? But you'll be able to put greater focus the nearer the timescales are to today. Don't obsess about it too much, particularly not for retirement. Spend your time establishing the nearer term stuff in greater detail. Retirement can be a 1-day thing. As it gets closer, then you will obviously bring it into sharper focus and work harder to achieve it. So try and establish your timescales. Third thing you need to do is to understand and apply what I call risk flex. I think I might have coined that term, risk flexing, but I'm sure probably somebody far brighter than me did so way before me. But I've got a video on the whole concept. I'll link to it in the show notes. Remember the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/NA4. But the idea of risk flex is that you start with your baseline risk profile. You have done that, haven't you? Yeah. You start with your baseline risk profile and you dial it up or down based on timescale. So for goals, 5 years hence, maybe less than that, maybe 3, 4, 5 years, you dial down your risk. You invest that money at a lower level of risk than you might otherwise be comfortable with because of the short time scale. If your goal is timescale between 5 and 10 years, then you just invest according to your baseline risk profile, right? If it's 10 years or more out, you can dial it up a bit because of the time that we're going to be investing over. And for very long time stuff, maybe retirement, 15 years out or more, then you can really dial up, really take the risk because you know that time and markets will do their thing for you. Okay, much more on risk next week, so I'll leave it there for now. But watch that risk flexing video if you haven't already, and you'll get some idea of what I mean. Basically, risk is a function, or should be a function, of timescale. Number 4, identify and apportion your savings. So you need to divvy up the money that you've got now, either as a lump sum or the amount that you've identified that you can save monthly towards your goals. You need to divvy it up between your goals. So the key message here is, I think, to prioritize the near term, but not exclusively. So prioritize it, but don't just invest in near term stuff at the exclusion of the longer term stuff. So tilt it towards goals that you want to achieve earlier. But if you do that completely and put all your money in there, you'll never put any money away towards retirement, because there's always going to be stuff you need in the shorter term. So I'm assuming that you're in your workplace pension already, if you're employed and if you're eligible. If not, then do so. And if you're not employed, if you're self-employed, or if you're ineligible for whatever reason, just set up a personal pension. Dead simple. Pay something into it and factor in a pension into your long-term goals. So if you are saving into a workplace pension, that's part of your savings rate. That's part of your monthly savings. You need to factor it in. So let's say you've got, as far as when it comes to apportioning between longer term and shorter term stuff, maybe start at 75% of your monthly savings towards shorter term stuff. Tilt it towards that, 25% in your longer term stuff. So let's say you've got 400 quid a month to save. Well, you would put £300 per month towards your nearer term goals, and maybe £100 a month towards your longer term, your retirement type stuff. Just a rule of thumb. Try it, see what you think. But the important thing is that that will affect some of your other variables, because let's say you are saving for a house deposit in 5 years' time. That's going to take you longer if you only put 300 quid a month aside for it, assigning the other £100 towards your longer term stuff, your retirement goals. It'll take you longer at 300 quid than it would if you put all the money towards saving for a deposit. So that itself becomes a variable. So work out the difference. How much longer will it take you at 300 quid a month than 400 quid a month? Are you happy with that? If not, you're going to need to do something about it. And the whole process of determining this will focus your mind. So you might determine, in light of this, well, okay, if I've got to put 100 quid a month for my longer term goals, I'm going to need to find another £100 a month somewhere to put towards my sort of house deposit goal, because I really want to do that in 5 years. I don't want to do it in 6.5 or 7 years. I want to do it as soon as I can, really. So what happens then? You're going to have to work out a way to make it happen. Is it a side hustle? Is it a second job? Do you start selling some stuff on eBay to make that extra £100 a month that you can then invest? But without planning, do you see, you'd just be flying blind. At least now you know the impact of the variables, and then you can work with them and redo the maths to make it serve your purposes. So apportioning your savings is itself a variable, and you might just need to play around with it until you get to a level that you're happy with. Next thing you need to do is to choose your wrappers. Wrappers? Generally, I mean tax accounts. So different types of accounts. We call them wrappers in my world, in the financial planning world, financial services. But accounts, really. Pensions, ISAs. And for most of us, that's all we need to build our wealth. Pension and ISAs, right? There's so much flexibility in those two accounts that really most people are unlikely to need anything else. Of course, the lifetime ISA is a sort of subset of the ISA family, if you like. Definitely worth considering if your goal is to buy your first home, and can be useful towards long-term retirement savings as well, because there's a free bonus money there. Simply put, though, it's likely that ISAs are going to be for shorter and medium-term money. Pensions are going to be for longer-term retirement funding, really. All right? And as you get further along in your wealth-building journey, you might decide, well, actually, yes, I'm putting money into a pension, but I'm going to sort of supplement that with some ISA contributions as well. So I've got two strings to the bow when I do come to retire. As far as the choice of which ISA you would choose, I'm assuming we're talking stocks and shares ISAs here, not cash ISAs. Those are not where you build wealth. So in terms of which ISA you're choosing, you're talking about which platform you're going to choose as your provider. Costs are obviously a factor here. So things like dealing fees. If you're like most people, you don't have a great deal of interest in investing as such, and you just want to put the money to work, then just choose a platform. You can always move money around later if you feel the need to. As you know by now, my longtime sponsors, 7IM, they've launched a Meaningful Money branded investment platform. It's perfect if you just want to get on with it, right? You just want to pick a wrapper, choose a risk profile, and start saving. meaningfulmoney.tv/podcast-invest for more info on that. I know it's a weird link. It just means I can track where you're coming from. meaningfulmoney.tv/podcast-invest. If you're looking elsewhere, if you're starting out, probably a platform that charges you a percentage of your money as a fee will work out cheaper than a flat fee platform, because you haven't got a great deal of money there. If you're just starting out, that percentage is actually a small amount of money in pounds terms. But as your portfolio grows, it might be that you'd be better off with a fixed fee platform. So keep that in mind as you choose this stuff. Factor it all in. So choose your wrappers, choose your platform. There's plenty of stuff on Meaningful Money to help you with that. Number 6 of 7 that you need to do is to choose a fund to match your timescale. Obviously, that's a massive subject, so rather than address it here, one of my most popular episodes ever is called How to Choose a Multi-Asset Fund. Right? An entire episode based on how to pick a fund. There's a link in the notes to it. Where are the show notes, Pete? Tell me again. Where are the show notes? meaningfulmoney.tv/NA4, New Accumulators, episode 4. All right? And then the last thing you need to do is to review things regularly. I talked a little bit about this last week. At least once a year. I talked about maybe if you're brand new to this, just putting a marker 3 months after you get going and ask yourself some questions. So listen back to last week about that. Really, annually is fine, I think. Maybe every 6 months, it is up to you. But this isn't really about reviewing investment performance, really. It's more about making sure that the timescales are still on track. So, for example, if you've been investing for a year and you did all this work at the start about timescales and apportioning money in the right way, well, all of your goals now are a year closer, right? You're a year down the line. All those goals are a year closer in time. So you need to ask yourself, does that mean you should adjust the risk profile according to the risk flex idea that I was talking about earlier on? If so, do you need to make some inter-account moves of money, or do you need to make some fund switches? Does the timescales changing mean that you need to make some changes to how the money is set up? So make a point of sitting down to do this. It doesn't have to take long. Far better to be intentional about it, though, than suddenly you let it go for 3 or 4 years and you find that things are completely out of whack because you've just let them drift. You could find yourself in a higher risk than you should be taking sort of situation. Nasty dip in the markets could mean a complete reassessment of your plans, but that's not going to be you, right? You're intentional. Intentional is your middle name. Mine is Benedict, not intentional. Okay, so any questions, leave them in the comments at the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/NA4. Okay, quick review. This is from Salisbury Andy. I'm new to podcasts. I know, where have I been? He says. This was the second podcast I listened to. The first, I only listened to 2 episodes. I've just listened to session 200, and I've listened to a large proportion of the 200 in the last few months. My commute is far more rewarding now. I'm glad, Andy. The info on building wealth slowly has really helped me with re-engage with investing, and I've drawn up a financial plan, just what we've been talking about today. It needs refining, but is a good start. Pete is doing great work and deserves all the success he's getting. I look forward to catching up with the remaining episodes and see where he takes us. Andy, it's great to have you on board, my friend. Keep going. Well done on setting up your own little plan. Keep going and execute. That's what you need to do now. But thank you for leaving a review. If you want to do that, just like Salisbury Andy has done, if you're of an Apple persuasion, meaningfulmoney.tv/iTunes. But wherever you're listening to this show, leave me a review there. I'd really appreciate it because it keeps me near the top of the rankings and helps more people find out about the show. Okay, just a quick nod on Meaningful Academy. It's inching ever closer to realization. I do appreciate your patience. The initial launch will be for the Getting Started track, so helping people make progress quickly with things like debt clearance, budgeting, putting in a sure foundation of insurance, and really to sort of stand you in good stead for the financial future. So it's not launched yet, but you can still register your interest. meaningfulacademy.com. You're not signing up to anything there. It's a yes, I'm interested, keep me posted kind of list. All right, meaningfulacademy.com for that. Okay, next week we're going to be talking about risk tolerance and capacity for loss, essential subject for wealth builders. Don't miss it, folks. Really important. Remember, if you've got any questions on this season particularly, you can leave them at season14@meaningfulmoney.tv. It's an email address, right? season14@meaningfulmoney.tv. I'm collating those as time goes on so that I can build a Q&A show at the end in episode 10 of this season, as has become tradition here on Meaningful Money. Okay, so season14@meaningfulmoney.tv for any questions related to this whole new accumulators bit, early stage wealth building, all that good stuff. Okay, folks, that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm getting into the stride of this season now, 4 episodes in. Hope that today was helpful. Remember, show notes. How many times have I mentioned this? meaningformoney.tv/NA4. Comments and questions there. Thanks so much for joining me, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next week.